Welcome to episode 3 of Tales from the RGV. We're very excited today to be speaking with our special guest, Margarita Longoria. She's a local Latina author from the RGV.
Her book, Beyond Borders, is a fantastic example of stories from the border. Consisting of short stories, essays, and poems, it explores many of the facets of growing up bicultural and bilingual in South Texas. We grew up listening to these stories from our parents, aunts, and uncles, so it's great to see a book that showcases these stories from our culture. So let's welcome our guest.
I really enjoyed this book, Margie. I can't wait to finish it. It's very inspirational for our students, Latinos in the area. Thank you so much for joining us today. The first question I'd ask is, what inspired you to write this Living Beyond Borders, growing up Mexican in America?
I was an 8th grade English teacher once upon a time before I became a librarian. And I remember reading books with my kids, and we read everything. We read The Outsiders, and the kids loved The Outsiders. But I remember one of my students telling me, like, we love The Outsiders, but one of them had asked, it's like the Outsiders could be Mexican boys because they were like this little gang. And he related to the story because he just loved it. And he thought, I wish there was a book about Mexican kids. And I was like, you know what? So I started looking for books about Mexican kids for them. And there was very few. I found like René Saldana's The Jumping Tree and Viola Canales, Sancho Cisneros. There was a few, but there wasn't a lot that I wish there were at the time that I was teaching. So then fast forward, I'm a librarian, and we're just in this ugly age where they were just saying ugly things about Mexicans in the media. And I got really upset. And I was like, you know what? Like, I wanted to fight back, and I didn't know how to fight back. So I remembered my kids wanting more stories. And then I thought, like, I want stories as an English teacher, as an educator, a Mexican-American educator. I want more stories for our kids in schools and in the world so they can read about our culture too. So I thought of this idea. I was like, you know what? I'm going to put together an anthology of short stories and poems, whatever they want to give me, so we can give this to me. I was going to give it to just my friends and my, the people, the teachers that I thought needed it for their classrooms. And I was very lucky that the first person I asked, her name was Guadalupe Garcia McCall. Guadalupe she's from Texas too. She immigrated from Mexico when she was a little girl. She grew up in Eagle Pass. And then she was a teacher at Somerset High School for a long time. And she wrote she's an award-winning writer. Her and I became really good friends. And I had told her about the idea. She was like, I love it. Let's go ask everybody we know. So I started asking a few people that we knew that were Mexican-American and that wrote. And we're a very, very small community, the Mexican-American writing community. So I pretty much did ask everybody we know. And some people said yes, some people said no. And I kind of she was with her agent in New York in 2018, December 2018, and her agent wanted to talk to me. So I spoke with her agent, and her agent told me, let me represent you. I can help you develop this proposal, and we can sell it to one of the big 5. And one of the big 5 are the 5 big publishing companies of the world.
Wow.
And it was like, it's Penguin Random House, it's Simon & Schuster, Macmillan, and there's a couple others. And I was thinking to myself, like, wow, like that's a dream come true for any bookworm, any person that's wanted to write a book, to think that your book can get published by one of the big 5. And I was kind of like, well, I don't know, but I was real. So I didn't know what to say. I was like, let me think about it. So then Lupita calls me back, and she's like, Margie, agents don't just fall on people's laps. You sign with the agent and let's go. So I was like, oh, okay, right. This is pre-COVID. So I was like, okay. So I signed with the agent, and she did. She sold the book to Penguin Random House, which is the biggest publishing house in the world. So we're published in both English, and we got published in Spanish. Our Spanish edition came out in January. That was really exciting. So just to know that it's in 2 languages, and I was even interviewed with some Spanish. I got Spanish press. Some Spanish big TV shows and journalists. So that was fun. And it's kind of taken a life of its own. It's been reviewed very well. Like, we've gotten starred reviews from 3-star reviews, which is very important. Like, I know it's not, people think, but it's very important to get starred reviews from like your from these reviewers, from these they're called professional reviewing places. And so we've got 3 of them, and on two state reading lists right now, which is we're on two Texas state reading lists, which means every
Wow.
library in Texas, every school library and a public library will have the book because we're on these lists. And I've had a couple of universities, University of Texas Pan Am or RGV,
Mhm.
and another university in Oklahoma and another university in Houston contacted me with I was on their syllabus. The book was on
Wow.
their syllabus. So I was really excited about that. They sent me the syllabus to see your book on a syllabus when you're a professional student like us.
It's a big deal.
I
Yeah.
mean, we're always going to school.
Yeah.
So that was exciting. And I got to speak with one of the classes. I did a Zoom with them, and it's just been very, very. My whole thing was I really wanted these stories in the classroom. So I'm really excited that that's where it seems like we're taking them to the classroom, because
Mhm.
these stories, every single story is beautiful. We went through every story with a fine. I remember getting these stories, and the first story I got was the story. I don't know if you guys haven't read them yet, but it was called "My Name is Dolores." You'll get to it.
Mhm.
It's this beautiful story about a little girl who she couldn't speak English as she came to school in America. And, she was talking with her parents, real scared, like, what am I supposed to say? And how am I supposed to get, she doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
And, the dad just said, just tell the teacher, my name is Dolores, my name is Dolores. And the story, I read the story, I remember thinking, like, if I can get 20 other stories just like this,
Yeah.
like this book will be like, this is exactly what we want. Like I wanted the book to be mirrors and windows. I wanted our kids, our youth, even us as adults to see these stories and to see ourselves and to be proud. I want our young people to be proud of being Mexican American. A lot of times they try to make us not feel proud to be Mexican American, and that kind of upsets me. It's always upset me when people when people aren't proud to be Mexican. I love being Mexican American. I grew up in a home where we celebrated being Mexican American. So
Well,
it's just
that takes us to, what was it like for you growing up in the RGV? Can you give us a little bit of your backstory growing up?
I grew up in Edinburgh, Texas. I was born and raised in Edinburgh, Texas, and my dad was a very proud Mexican, and my dad was a social worker, and he was a volunteer and a local. He served on many boards, and he was just a busybody. He did a lot of stuff. But my dad, he raised us to be proud. Like, my name is Margarita, after my mom, after my grandma, my dad's mom, and my little brother, his name is Francisco Emiliano, after Pancho Villa and Emiliano Zapata. I mean,
Yeah.
how much more Mexican can you get, right? And I remember thinking, that's his name. Like, Mano's name is, he's got this. My dad was a very proud Mexican, and we grew up in a home where we celebrated our culture. We were never embarrassed to be. I was never embarrassed to be Margarita. I was never embarrassed to be Mexican. Like, I remember growing up, and some kids at school didn't want to be Mexican, or tried not to be Mexican, and didn't say their names the way they're supposed to say. And I'm very, very about my name. My name is Margarita Longoria. Like, I'm sorry that you say it the way it sounds, say it the way it is. Like, I had been called Longoria. I mean, they botched up my name, all, and it's just like, so no, like, if I can say, and I'm the National Honor Society sponsor at my campus, right? So before I announce my kids' names, I practice. I ask them, how do I say your, because nowadays some of these names are like, so I'm like, how do you say your name? And I'll practice and practice, because names are very important.
Yes.
And I don't want to botch their name the way my name has been botched, and,
Oh,
and
yeah.
if I say it wrong, correct me, and I will correct myself. Like, don't allow me to say your name wrong, because we should be proud of who we are. And I loved growing up here. I went to Edinburgh High School, and I had the best time. But I feel growing up along the border, it was the best of both worlds, because we were able to live here and be American, and we were able to go across and be Mexican. It was just, we had the best of both worlds, really. And it's something that I'll always cherish and love.
What languages did you speak growing up?
I speak both English and Spanish. I'm not going to say I'm the best Spanish speaker, because I'm really not. My parents did speak English and Spanish to us. My Spanish is just not as beautiful as, like, my parents' Spanish. I don't know if it's because we don't I don't know, maybe because it wasn't, it's just not. But their Spanish was, but I can read in Spanish, I can
Mhm.
write in Spanish, I can speak in Spanish, and I understand Spanish.
Oh, that's great. Growing up, how did you identify ethnically? And did this change as you matured and entered college? I know us growing up, we weren't, we didn't think about Latino, Chicano. We were just, Mexican Americans or Hispanic. There wasn't a lot of verbiage, and everybody was kind of the same. So we didn't really have that issue. How did you identify early on?
The same. I mean, we grew up here, just like you guys, and everybody was just like us. There was a few people who weren't like us. Like we had a couple of white friends, but I never. And I'll be honest, a lot of these white friends that I had no idea they weren't some kind of Mexican because they were so immersed into our culture that they were like Mexican white boys, Mexican white girls, because they were just and they never were really that much. I didn't really feel any different from them because they didn't treat us different. We didn't treat them different because we grew up here all together. And it wasn't until I started, when I moved away with my husband too, when he started work, he worked everywhere. And that's whenever I started feeling
Other.
or seen, that I was seen as other, like I was a little bit white for a Mexican, but then I wasn't white enough. And it was just like, and
I think if you leave the RGV, you'll get that experience. And most of the time we don't get that till like college or later. I didn't understand feeling other until I went to Austin. And then I was like, oh, okay, there's the difference, between, we're very insulated in the Valley. Even though we have tons of different, we have Latinos in the Valley, but there's different variations. We have Tex-Mex, we have people straight from Mexico, recent immigrants, we have third generation Texans that are still have family in Mexico, but it's still very insulated compared to the rest of the, Texas, especially the northern and eastern parts,
Yes. And I'm one of those people, I have a hot head, like I get angry. And I get angry, and I know, and I've learned to control not to be so angry.
Yeah.
But like I would get mad. I was, I would fight, and that's not good. You shouldn't fight. So this is what this kind of like my way to fight without fighting the way I used to fight.
And to be honest, there's some people that their ignorance, it's rude, but I don't think their heart is in the wrong place. They just maybe have never been exposed to other, especially Latinos. There's some Anglos that have never really been around our culture, and they don't really understand it. I've gotten the same story I remember in your introduction. Wow, you speak English great, and I'm like, well,
For a Mexican,
why wouldn't I? Yeah, why would you speak great for Mexican? Like, okay,
but
thanks.
The thing is that they say that they don't realize what they're saying. I'm like, did they just say that to me? Like,
it's a microaggression for sure.
Yeah.
My brother went away to play football in Iowa, so he was like, they wanted to. One of his papers, and my brother's a wonderful writer, and he turned in an English paper, and they wanted to know where he got it. Like they didn't believe it was his. It had to be plagiarized because it was perfect. And he was the only Mexican at that school, and there was another friend of his that was he was half black, half white, and another one that was half white, half Filipino, and mono that was Mexican. There was three in the whole school because they went to go play football. It was.
It's hard.
Mm-hmm.
What artists or authors have been a big influence on you? Like who do you count?
Well, I love I love everybody. I love Jane Austen. I mean, even though she's one of the best writers I love Jane Austen. She's my favorite person, my favorite writer. And then there's Sandra Cisneros. I love Sandra Cisneros. I love Frida Kahlo.
Frida, yeah.
I love some of my recent Mexican American favorites that I have really been like my friend Lupita, Guadalupe Garcia Macada, and Saldana. He was one of the first people from the Valley to be published, traditionally published with his work growing up here in Mission, which was that book was always real fun to read with I used to it talked about Foy's and like the Kmart. So the kids were able to culturally identify, and they loved it. And I would read it with him every year. It was before Zoom and all that stuff. So we would write letters to him, and he would write letters back. And then one year I didn't write to him anymore because I wanted to read Twilight.
A good book to read
Twilight
for
is this big, and I wanted to read Twilight, and we were going to go to the movie. So
You know,
I read,
me and my brother both read it, so
Yeah.
we understand.
I love it.
My wife, that was my wife's favorite book. That book brought her back to reading, which is such a funny story. But I'll have to have her tell it to you. But that brought her back into reading. That basically turned her into a librarian. But that's another story.
That book did a lot for so many people. It did a lot for the young adult industry. It did a lot for reading, and I read that book with my students, and they loved it. So like, and I remember Dr. Saldana wrote to me. He emailed me. He's like, "Where are my letters?" I was like, "Oh, I didn't read your book." It was like, really? I was like, "I'm sorry, Dad. So in love. I can't right now. I love Edward Cullen too much to care."
We're gonna learn about vampire culture.
You know what? I was able to the Spanish flu, like all kinds of stuff. We're able to go into that. Which kind of Salem witch child, and we were able to use. I had to develop a unit for all of us because we wanted to go to the movie. So I had to figure out something for history, something for math, something for science, and something, of course, for me. And I did. We figured it all out with that book. It was awesome.
How has being bilingual and bicultural influenced your writings?
Well, growing up, I've always been a bookworm. I've always loved to read books. And my favorite books growing up were, of course, like Sweet Valley High. And I love those books. And like The Outsider is one of my favorite books. I read it in third grade and I fell in love with all those boys. I remember, I don't know if I didn't, like, I always could relate to Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield because there were two girls who went to school. They had friends, they had family. They lived like a life that I lived. It's a normal little like middle class life, right? So I really didn't pay attention to the fact that they weren't culturally like me, right?
Yeah.
I didn't, and it wasn't until I was teaching when my students were the ones that were like, "Well, why isn't Harry Potter Mexican?" They would ask me these questions, and I would be like, why? You're right. Why isn't Harry Potter Mexican? And so that's whenever I started to think like, we need stuff like this for our kids. Not everybody grew up like me, where I didn't.
Yeah.
It was different, like where I don't know how to explain it. I just didn't. I loved books for books, and some kids need more. They need to feel seen.
If they can't relate to what's happening, like it's a foreign world. A lot of our students, because right now I'm working in La Jolla as a counselor, but I was a teacher in La Jolla too. So was my brother. And those students, they need to be able to relate to the material, because if they can't, they're just not making connections. They can't fathom a world where there's snow, where they have to wear galoshes. Like, what the hell is a galosh? They don't know what that is. If you can't relate to them, and it's hard to be a teacher now. The job has changed in the last 20 years. And I tell teachers, I'm very pro teacher, and I tell them, look, I understand your job's a lot harder. It's just not about teaching. You have to relate to the student. You have to get them to understand that you care about them. And it's a lot harder than it was. And a lot of the material we have does not relate to our students. It's difficult.
Yeah, the books and the media, it's not related.
I read an article where it's like the books like by Mexican American people, it's like the lowest. We don't have any. We hardly have any.
Yeah.
Books about animals with characters that are animals.
Yeah.
They're everywhere. And it's just like, you think about it and it's like, well, I guess we can all, I don't know, but it's just, we need
more.
We need culturally relevant literature for everyone. And that was my thing whenever I did this. At first, I was thinking of doing one with all, like before, like with, Latinos. Let's do all, because I have a lot of Latino writer friends, like Puerto Rican, Cuban, I mean, everyone, right? Like, oh my God, I have everybody, right? But I thought, you know what? Like, I want it for our culture, for our kids, for us, because we need to, we're the biggest minority, we're the biggest Latino group, why are we not out there? Why are we not the ones with the most? Why are we not the ones shining the most? Why? And we should be, and not that we should, I mean, we should all shine, but we need culturally relevant literature. We need books for Mexican American kids to see themselves and to be proud. And we need books for people to see us and know that we're not rapists, know that we're not criminals, know that we're not, we're not bad people.
Yes.
So that was very important to me whenever I wanted to do this. It's like, I need to show the world that we are just like everybody else. You know, our family, we have joy, we have pain, we have happiness, we have sorrow, because a lot of times whenever we do read books or stories about Mexican Americans, they're sad stories, you know, like stories of struggle.
They are very sad. There
And
is a lot of
so
struggle. Yeah.
a lot of struggle, and that's fine, because we do struggle, but we also need to show happiness. And we need to show, you know, we need to show
I
both
think we
sides of
should.
them.
We need some more stories about pachangas and barbecue and having fun.
Yes, because we're like everyone else. We're happy. We have it all, you know, just like everyone else. So that was very important to me, to get stories that were like that, like every kind, you know, sad stories, happy stories,
Yeah.
and to get short stories and to get poems, because some kids
Some of the
relate
poems
to a
are very
poem.
good. What really struck me about your book was there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of emotion in the stories. It comes across that you can feel, like you can feel these people's, you know, what they're going through, you know, the story, the authors, you know, in your introduction also, you can tell you're very passionate about the subject. It comes across. So that's really cool. It's not something I thought about when I picked up the book, you know, but it's very, you know, it's a strong feeling, you know, there's a lot of emotion you can tell tied into the book.
That was very important. And you have, and also there was,
Mhm.
whenever everybody said yes, it was kind of like pre-COVID, right? So here we are. The book is due October 2020. That's when my manuscript was due. So I'm trying to get with all of my people. We need it. We're in the middle of this pandemic. I have authors, my friend Lupita, her father passed away from COVID.
Man.
One of the other authors, Ida's mom passed away during COVID. My cousin passed away during COVID. It was just like, it was my editor and my agent's fathers passed away. So it was just this time, like it was, and then to try to get creative people to be creative and to be during a time when you're sad. I remember thinking, like, I even told them, guys, if you can't come through with the story, that's fine. Like we'll figure it out. I'll let them know and we'll figure something out. Like, but no, everybody came through with their stuff. But it was also a very difficult time to try to write some of these because of what we were all going through. It was very interesting. And then to release a book during COVID.
I bet there wasn't a lot of books in 2021 that got released, you know, much less, you know, a Latino book. That's crazy, you know, that's amazing. Are you working on anything right now?
What's next?
Yeah. I have a lot of things I want working on, guys. One of them, I really can't talk about them yet because, but you know, because they don't want me. Like this book, whenever I wanted to do this one, it was like I couldn't even say I was doing anything. It was a year before whenever they announced that they sold it, and I was able to say, "Oh, I have an agent," and I have, you know, because they were so they didn't want anybody to take the idea and run with it, you know, because they were like, "We already have, and let's do it, and then we'll announce it." So I have 2 more anthologies that I want to do that I kind of wanted to do along with this one. I wanted kind of like a little trilogy.
Awesome.
And then I'm working on a novel.
Oh, wow.
But it's going to be a happy novel because I love romance and I love Jane Austen. So it's going to be kind of like a happy high school young adult novel.
Awesome.
And I have a mentor, so that's fun. Somebody that's actually helping me because, you know, I don't have an MFA. I just have an MA. So sometimes you don't feel like, well, everybody has MFAs and stuff. It's like, I don't have an MFA. But no, I have somebody working with me and she's helping me and it's going to, hopefully it'll be good.
Yeah. So what do you think makes RGV so special, the Rio Grande Valley? What makes it so special?
You know, I moved away a lot of times. We've lived everywhere. San Antonio, Houston. I don't even remember where. And there's just no place like home. Like, I think the valley is so beautiful because of the people in it. We are we're a different type of people and we're a warm people. We're like everybody here is family. Everybody here is family. Like, you know, like you guys, I've known you all since high school. I've known Leo and your friend Javi since high school. And I see you guys. I know I don't see you guys a lot in person, but you know, on Facebook and everything, like I see from you, I'm like, oh, I'm happy about everything in your life and happy that, you know, like it's just everything. I just feel that we just we grew up in this little town together and we grew up, all our parents were friends and we went to school together. I don't know. It's just, this place is just we have a camaraderie and in the valley, all the valley, not even just Hidalgo County, but like all 4 counties. And I just feel that we're just together with love and agriculture and food and the beach and like just everything about our community here is just, it's very much a family. The RGV.
It is very familial. You know, you'll run into people like I run into people all the time. And they'll tell me stories about my dad. I love to hear that. You know,
Your dad was great.
It's really cool to hear that. You know, and now I'm working. I work like a mile away from where he went to high school. It's crazy. And then my brother was in Edinburgh for a little bit, and he would, you know, hear stories my dad was working.
Yeah, I was there for 5 years as an assistant principal, and every day, like at least once a week, someone would come up to be like, "Oh, your dad was my favorite teacher," you know, and Fridays we would just watch the Cowboys game, and we wouldn't do anything on Fridays. It was the best.
Yeah.
I was like,
Your dad was so fun. I had him for law enforcement too. And I remember he was like, if somebody brings a guest speaker, I'll give you 100 for the rest of the year. So I told my dad, and we brought in a guy from TABC, Jerry Champion. And he came in and spoke to the kids, spoke to us. So I got 100. I loved your dad. He was so fun. He really was a good guy.
He embodies a lot of what makes the valley pretty cool, you know.
yeah.
Well, Margie, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to recommend your book to everybody that I can. I already bought a few copies. I gave one to my mom, I gave one to my brother, get one for my wife, but it's such a good book. I'm going to encourage it to anybody that's into the RGV or our culture, you know. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And that one story with the girl when she goes to the principal's office, and that really stuck with me because I suspended kids that would get in fights with other kids. So it really it was just a really good story to relate to the situation that this girl was going through, and it was very difficult for her, and for a middle school child to express themselves that clearly is just incredible, you know. But that was one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, it was really good.
I love that story too. I love everything. Like when I was, every time that I was able to, like, they would send me the stories, I couldn't believe like my luck at how perfect and how they were going to fit in. And what I also love, you know, there's 6 or 7, I'm sure, I think there's 7 from the Valley in this book. It was very important to me to make sure that I had the Valley well represented in this book. But there's people that grew up all over the country. And I wanted that. I wanted all over the country experiences growing up Mexican American because we're everywhere. We're from sea to shining sea. And then I wanted different ages. Like I have real young writers and older writers, seasoned writers and brand new writers. There's one girl who's in her poem, and this is the first time she's ever been published. So that was exciting for me too, to be able to get her voice out there because she's an amazing poet. And I wanted her so bad to be published. So I asked her for a poem so I could get her published. So it was, because she's amazing, and I wish she would. Hopefully she'll do more. She's getting her MFA, so hopefully she'll do more. Nice. But I just feel like I wanted to include everybody in this book, and I really hope that we did. I think we did. I feel like we did a wonderful job.
And what you've done is such a positive thing for the RGV and for other students and other librarians and other educators. Like it's such a positive, it's awesome what you're doing, you know.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much again. I appreciate your time.
Thank you for taking time to speak with us.
Wow, that was a great episode. Talking to Margie, Margarita Longoria, about her book. Very interesting, the topics we talked about, how she dealt with different authors of different ages, specific to the RGV. That's very unique that we have a book that talks about the plight of people living here in the Rio Grande Valley, dealing with being an American in Texas, but also having ties to Mexico on the border. I thought it was a great book, and I'm going to recommend anybody out there, if you're looking for something interesting to read, I would recommend picking this one up. It is very good, has a lot of short stories, essays, and poems. They all relate. Overall, it was a great experience just meeting her and talking to her. What do you think, bro?
I love the stories. You know, 6 of the authors were from the RGV, the other ones were not, but even the ones that were not, when I read the stories, I still felt like this story could take place in the RGV. You know, these these characters could be my neighbor. So I think it's great what she's doing. She's just writing a book that showcases highlights from our area and gives a voice to people from our area. So I highly recommend the book if you're from the area, or even if you're not, if you're more interested in the culture in South Texas or even along the borderlands. But I guess that wraps up our third episode, and we'll see you soon. Thanks.